Hi, everyone. Welcome to this week's American Mussar Community Gathering. This will be our third week exploring the soul trait of enthusiasm and how enthusiasm, also known as alacrity, can help us with our practice of chesed, or loving kindness. Of course, chesed is a hard word to translate, but it means being there for someone without expecting anything in return. So we'll come back to that a little bit later, but right now, let's just relax in our seats and close our eyes and begin with a short meditation. You can take in a deep breath through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And again, inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And as you go at your own pace of inhaling and exhaling, if thoughts should come into your head, just observe them and let them go. Like watching a car move past on the road. Now is not the time for solving problems. Right now, all you need to do is inhale through the nose and hold, and exhale through the mouth and hold. And on your next inhale, say to yourself, Shema. And on the exhale, listen. Shema, listen. And Shema, we're listening deeply, without judgment, without offering advice. In Shema, we are listening with an open heart. Shema, listen. And when you're ready, you may open your eyes. Hi, Joanne. Hi, Carrie. Welcome. Nice to see you both. Well, to start our discussion today, it's a phrase we've looked at before, as we're talking about alacrity, about doing things. Genesis Rabbah, which is sort of some early midrash commentary on the Torah. It says that a mitzvah, or we can think of it as a deed, is only ascribed to one who completes it. So do you agree or do you disagree? Or when might this apply and when might it not apply? Yes, Paul.
I just have a question first so I understand. So what does it mean for a mitzvah or deed to be ascribed to a person? Is it ascribed? I sort of know, but I don't know if there's a deeper meaning.
Kind of given like credit for. It's
Okay.
like,
All right.
mitzvah is a commandment. They're sort of the things we're supposed to do, the way we're supposed to live. So, it's a mitzvah to light candles on Shabbat. So putting the candles and the candlesticks out, but never lighting them, you don't get any mitzvah points
Gotcha.
for
Okay.
getting started.
And then Carrie had a.
My first thought when I saw that was actions speak louder than words.
Yeah.
So somebody who just says they're going to do something but never does it, that's not a mitzvah.
Yeah. Yeah. Thank you. Wendy.
Yesterday at Rabbi Jaffe's seminar, we did 3 sets of meditation, and longer than I'm used to. And I got a lot out of that particular act activity. And one of the things I thought about is when I'm inhaling, I'm getting this idea and I'm getting this intention. And then when I exhale, I'm actually able to then do the, complete it. And so I'm thinking it's just part of breathing. And if you breathe in and you never breathe out, well, I don't want to talk about it, but that's kind of the illustration that I got from doing that much meditation.
Thank you, Wendy. Yeah, Sarah.
Well, I kind of don't agree with this statement because if you set the candles out and candlesticks out and set the candles in, you're sort of getting the mitzvah going. And there's a lot of things, there's a process that occurs with a lot of things that you can't necessarily complete, X, Y, and Z. You could start a food drive, or you could start a, social action, whatever. And I think that initiating and kind of being a leader, for me, that's a mitzvah.
Yeah, great. Thank you. So there's a lot of parts to something, and who knows, maybe you put out the candles and then you go in the other room to get something and somebody runs in and lights the candles in front of you and they poach your mitzvah from you. That wouldn't be very cool. I know that's not really what you were talking about, but that did come to mind. But there's good stuff that happens before that. So we'll hear from Joanne and then Wendy.
Yes, so I've had occasions when my intention was to light candles, but I'm slow and sometimes I procrastinate. And then it's too late because you're supposed to do this before the sun sets. So if I don't make it before sunset, then I can't light the candles. I mean, if I can, but I don't.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, there's something to be said. Sometimes we have a deadline, and I was in one class and we're talking about these teachings in the Talmud about what are the times that you're allowed to say Shema, like at night. Like you're supposed to say it at night, but well, you have to say it before midnight. You have to say it before dawn, or they have all these arguments as rabbis do. And finally someone said, okay, well, what happens if you miss the deadline? Kind of wondering, is there going to be some punishment or whatever? And he's like, well, you just missed the opportunity to do the mitzvah. So there is, sometimes we just miss opportunities, and there's not to say there won't be other opportunities, but there's something to be said. So I'll hear from Wendy and then Marjorie.
Well, I'm glad you said that, Sarah, about the intention and then not being able to finish, because that reminded me of when you're giving to a nonprofit or you're giving for something specific and then that can't be accomplished. I think that's still a mitzvah.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy.
I agree.
Marjorie.
Well, when you talked about a deadline for doing a mitzvah, I thought about there is a tradition of counting the Omer, which it's the days between Passover and Shavuot when we receive the Torah.
Yeah.
And some people do it. But there's an online way to there's a calendar online. And there were days where it's like, oops, I forgot, I forgot about it. I forgot to count today. The good thing is though, you could go back and you could still, I still had the opportunity to read, there's always like some sort of very philosophical messages with it. And, I tie it into Mussar a little bit. And you could always, I feel like it's almost like you have the opportunity as a do-over or go back. So I felt like I was still completing the mitzvah.
Yeah.
It wasn't timely, but I still got the information from it and I appreciated it.
Yeah. Great. Yeah, sometimes we can get things out of it on multiple levels. I think it's implicit in what you're saying. One way that this teaching once really helped me is I used to do really long meditations, like for a while. It's about 10 years ago. I would do like these 45-minute guided Kabbalistic meditations that were really cool. And sometimes, I remember once that I came out of it and I was so filled with energy. It was a Saturday morning, and I said, I'm gonna we had a wet bar and it was just piled up with all this crap. I said, I'm gonna clean the wet bar. And so I was going and I was about 2/3 of the way done. I was starting to get hungry. I was like, no, the mitzvah only counts if it's completed. And so that kind of helped me kind of get over the hump. And I sort of looked at it, and when you get the big piles and you get rid of like 2/3 of the pile, there's still a pile there. It didn't actually look any nicer than it did before. So that was an occasion where this kind of teaching helped me push through and kind of get over the hump, because it's easier for me to start stuff than to finish it. I think it's Paul, or maybe it's Carrie. I just want to say hello and welcome to Tracy. I saw you join us, so hi. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, so I
Oh,
think
that was
to
Tracy.
it depends on what you're promising to yourself or what you're promising to others. If it's a promise, or if it's, how clear you are about what you want to do, what you need to do. So for me, I know I'm definitely guilty of having grand visions of what I can do, and then I get started, and then that's as far as I go. It's not always a mitzvah that I'm planning on. So, I mean, there's that. And I do think that I'm more careful about saying I'm going to do something for someone, in terms of, and I'm still getting clear on, mitzvahs. I think mitzvahs that are done, in the course of life is one thing, but mitzvahs that are sort of part of a process, I suppose, or part of a ritual would be something else. And maybe that's kind of, I'm trying to just untangle all these things.
Yeah.
So
yeah, the whole what is a mitzvah is a whole big long conversation. But yeah, I totally hear you. And these sort of commitments that we make to other people are really important. I had, thinking about like my year, and one of the things I was thinking about in the David Jaffe seminars was like someone I had texted them and said, oh, it'd be really fun to do this. And they said, oh, I would love to do that with you. And so then like we had a call like a week later, said, so what about this podcast thing? They're like, oh, podcasts are really hard and a lot of work. And I was like, wait, what happened to, so I was like, okay, this person is busy and whatever. But it's I thought they were serious. I didn't, and it was just like one of these spur of the moment, oh, what a cool idea, or how fun would that be? But it wasn't how fun would that be. It was, I would really like to do that. At least that's how I took it. And that matters. And so what I was wrestling with about yesterday, I was like, well, is this worth bringing up to the person? Is it really that big? Is it a big enough deal where I want to actually mention it? Is it really impacting my relationship with this person? I don't know if it is. So that's what I am. Or is it just kind of nitpicky? So that's one of the things I'm wrestling with. Okay, so hello to Martin and hello to Tracy. Thanks for joining us. We're going to go a little bit deeper here. May get joined by Lila. So for just a quick review, for those who haven't been here or have forgotten since last week, our soul trait of enthusiasm or alacrity, it's on a spectrum. And if we have if we're out of balance on the too little side, I'm not crazy about the word slothful and lazy, although even though I wrote this, but it's just it can be that molasses feeling. It can be just not taking action. But too much, it's just like constantly jumping into frantic busyness, taking decisions that we don't kind of think through sufficiently. So if we keep that in mind, I would love for someone, and we'll kind of
want to.
these quotes. I would love for someone to unmute and read the first bullet, please.
Okay. The indolent person is wiser, and is that the correct word, indolent?
Yes,
What does that mean?
it means lazy.
Oh, so the lazy person is wiser in their own eyes as 7 sages.
Great, thank you.
Hmm.
Okay, so this is from the book of Proverbs. I'm going to put this in the going to put this in the chat. So the lazy person is wiser in their own eyes as 7 sages. What is this talking about? Yeah, Martin. If you could remember to unmute, please.
I see. It's not saying the lazy person is wise. I see.
Yeah, it's in their own eyes. What's
Okay, I understand.
wise in your own eyes?
Great, thank you.
So we have Wendy and Paul.
I was just thinking, if you're lazy, you don't really want to think about the 7 sages being wise because you might have to do something.
Mm,
So maybe that's just putting yourself up there so everybody else is beneath you and you don't really have to do anything. And that would be how you were lazy.
okay. Great, thank you. So Paul, and then I think Marjorie, I think I saw your hand too.
I just
okay.
got the impression that he's clueless or she's clueless. That was my take on that.
You're
You're
clueless.
clueless, bud, you know.
And how does that cluelessness show up?
In
What might that
arrogance,
look like?
they're arrogant.
Uh-huh.
What would it look like? Uh, let me think on that.
Okay. Hey, Marjorie.
Okay, my hand was up this time.
Okay.
I think I see it as somebody, when you ask what it looks like, now of course I'm not speaking for Carrie, but I would say it looks like somebody who just talks about all these things that they're gonna do or they've done, and you ask for they brag a lot. They're
Uh-huh.
pretty self-important. It's a lot of it's a lot of lip service, I think, is what you get from these folks,
Yeah.
and nothing concrete.
Great. Thank you. Karen.
To me, like a very clear example of rationalizations.
Mm. Yeah. Do you want to say more about that?
Oftentimes, I think when people are not up to doing something, they find a way to tell themselves that it's okay
Mhm.
that they're not doing that, why they don't need to do that. And in this case, maybe I am as smart as they are, but I'm just not up to showing it.
Yeah. Yeah. So I really like that, this idea of rationalizations. And sometimes they can get pretty sophisticated, I think. Sometimes they're pretty straightforward. Oh, I'm not going to give money to this homeless person because they're just going to spend it on drugs and alcohol.
It allows us to protect our egos.
Yeah. 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 I'm not I know what's really going on here. So I don't need to do A, B, or C. And, I'm not a bad person because I did or didn't do this because of, I think that's kind of what is this the right flavor, Karen, of the point you're making?
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah, so how do rationalizations sort of show up in your life? Or are there certain, I think we've all fallen into that kind of rationalization trap before. Does anyone have a thought for maybe how this shows up, since we are in the season of reflection? And you don't need to kind of share here because we're being recorded, of course, but if someone has something they would feel comfortable sharing is maybe an area where they would like to rationalize less. I'll just open the floor. Yeah, Sarah.
So I'm very good at telling myself a story and, believing it. And, I can create a whole novel or novella. And sometimes it's a rationalization, oh, I don't want to go to the gym because I'm so sore and it'll be better for me to lay in bed and read my book. And, so rationalizations can sometimes sabotage action. And I mean, and it's not necessarily truthful.
Yeah. Yeah. Absolutely. Thank you, Sarah. Yes, Marjorie.
I just have a question. So, oh, I lost my train of thought. So would rationalizations just kind of be, oh, I know, making excuses?
Yeah.
Is that sort of what, I guess I'm sort of evasive on what the point, like, when you're trying to rationalize something. Yeah, I guess it's just telling yourself, you're not really being true to yourself.
Yeah, and it's
Right.
kind of making an excuse that maybe is a little bit more clever. Like it seems like you're making the rational choice, but it's really just a way of not doing something.
Okay, so like my example would be, it's really trivial, but okay, if I haven't brought the dog outside within a certain point of time, she will have accidents in the hallway. Therefore, I have to really time out when I'm taking my trash down the hall to the garbage chute. And then it's like, well, I guess the dog hasn't been out in X amount of time. So I guess I can't bring the trash down, walk it down the hall. And it's like, come on, leave the dog in the apartment. It's not that big of a deal. So I mean, like I said, it's minutia, and if we're looking at really big issues, that people do tend to overlook in this picture. So, okay.
Yeah, and I personally love small examples, especially for Mussar practice, because they're easier to change and they help us build that muscle. Like my mother used to tease me, and as a teenager, I had the chore of doing dishes, but I soaked everything. You can't do this pot because it needs to soak because it's too hard to scrub. And I still tend to have a little bit of let's let this soak for a while so we don't have to do it. And then we just got, some new pot where nothing sticks to it. There's no soaking required. So I just have to do it. Oh.
Yeah, well, I'd like to apply some thought about this to the other end of the spectrum rather than it's all about being lazy. And that is that there have certainly been times in my life where I've been on the very rash or too busy side of things. Where, I'm sorry, I got so much going on, I just can't do it, and that's my rationalization. I'm not being lazy. I'm not just, I'm not indolent. I'm not laying around, just staring out the window. I'm doing 5 different things at one time. because, in that moment, my ego says that I'm just that important. And I just can't take one more thing on. It's a way of avoiding, doing things for sure. Yeah, I think there's more to it than just whether you're lazy or not. I think that, again, it brings in the other soul traits, certainly humility, sort of figuring out what's the appropriate space for me to take in this, what is an appropriate to take on, things like that. So.
I think a 4-year-old and a 5-year-old, maybe even a 3-year-old, are incredibly brilliant at creative ways to avoid tasks or anything else. and they can twist their little, they can take whatever you say, turn it around and make it seem right. It's just amazing to me. So I learn a lot listening to those guys.
I bet. Thank you, Carrie. Joanne.
Yeah, procrastination with dishes is a big thing for me. And I try to overcome it. For a while I was saying I can't go to sleep if there's dishes in the sink, and I also do a thing where I would say, okay, I'll do 10, like I'll count how many pieces I'm wanting. So once I start, that's okay. But sometimes it's like, oh, it's too late now and it can wait till morning. And I also tried like rinsing or soaking or whatever. But that's really a rationalization because it doesn't do the job a lot of times. I'm working on it.
Yeah, I'm a big one also on I don't have enough time for this. Like if I have to write I don't have time to work on my thesis right now. I only have 20 minutes and I really need 2 hours to do this. And, in reality, I could have probably gotten a couple paragraphs written in that 20 minutes when I really honestly didn't do anything particularly productive during that time. And it was kind of in my work time block. So yeah, I hear that. Wendy, you can remember to unmute, please.
I like now I'm not going to make the bed because I'm just going to go to sleep in it again tonight. And I'm not going to clean the floor because it's just going to get dirty in the days before the company comes. So yeah, there's a lot of things. And like Carrie, you're right. I got those mostly from the 3 and 4. It's like my grandson, when his dad says, it's time to go to bed now. And he says, I'm hungry. I'm like, oh, that's just typical.
Yeah. Thank you, Wendy. Sarah.
I really like the idea of breaking it down into small bites, and whatever you can do is good enough. I kind of, for me, I like to not have such black and white thinking. Like I have to clean the kitchen spotless. So for me now, one day I left dishes overnight in my sink, and I try to keep it pretty tidy. And I came down and there were ants in my sink.
Oh.
And 6 o'clock in the morning, so you could be sure that I never leave dirty dishes in my sink anymore. So that's, sort of an extreme example, but I really think that, I like to, sometimes instead of trying to clean a whole room, I'll say, okay, I'm going to clean a drawer. I'm going to, I really like breaking it down and that being enough. So, it's like an all or nothing. I'm trying to get away from the all or nothing, that just what you can do is enough.
I think that is a great segue to this next quote on the slide. So, should we look at this quote or not? But I think we will because it fits really well. Sarah, do you want to read this second bullet?
Supposed inability does not excuse anyone from any undertaking. If one but gives their utmost, they will succeed.
Okay, so I'll ask the same sorts of questions. What is Rabbi Chaim Shmulevitz? What's his point? And do we agree or disagree? Okay, so Paul, I see you jumping in. I'm gonna just put this in the chat box once again for those who want to percolate on it some more. So Paul, what do you think?
So, when I see the word supposed inability, or the word supposed inability does not excuse, to me, that sounds very judgmental.
Hmm.
You're supposedly unable to do this, and
Mhm.
that's your excuse. Is that what you're telling me?
Well, think of a 4-year-old.
I'm talking about humans in general, adults included, not just 4-year-olds. 4-year-olds are a special case for sure. But anyway, just, there's this sense of shaming and guilt inducing there, which is if you're that person saying that, then maybe you're trying to get somebody to get off their ass. I don't know, but I'm not sure that shaming is the long-term best strategy to take on.
Yeah, shaming is usually a terrible strategy for the long term.
That's what it sounds like to me. So
Yeah, good point. Karen.
I think that what's missing is the idea that people can work to their best level. And when we do the best that we can, that should be something that we can feel good about.
Yeah.
So I don't see this as shaming. I see this as encouraging people to do what they can at their level. And if they can go further and they want support, that's great. But I think to say, you don't really have the ability, so yeah, don't do this, don't try this, or I won't try this because I don't feel like I have the ability, means that we really could lose out on seeing people's potential.
Yeah, love that. Thank you, Karen. We'll hear from Sarah and then Wendy.
So when my son was studying for his bar mitzvah, he had learning disabilities, learning issues. And, the rabbis and clergy and cantors at Beth Am were just amazing and made it work for him and created a plan so that he could be successful in having a bar mitzvah. And he, did it. And, I have another child, a daughter, adult, they're both adults now, but my daughter, didn't have any learning issues and she was brilliant and she was a singer. So it was like a different thing, but it was very meaningful for my son. And, I think that everybody is given different gifts, and we all can't be, AP advanced scholars, and there has to, we have to value each person for the gifts that they have. I think there's different types of learners, and I just think so many things have changed over the decades with beliefs about learning, for example. And, we have to just not be so inflexible and think that there's just one way is the right way.
Yeah. Yeah, thank you, Sarah. Yeah, there's more than one right way to do things. Wendy.
Well, the word that bothered me was any at first, but now that Sarah said something, it doesn't bother me so much. But I'm thinking the divine gives myself whatever ability I have. And then I'm thinking, but I can't undertake any undertaking. And then I thought back, I thought, no, there's been a lot of times when I have had to undertake things that I'm not capable of doing, but I'm capable of finding people to do it. And sometimes it's not just you have to go it alone. You get to find help. And even that comes from the divine, knowing who, knowing what, those kinds of things. I think you're not in it alone to me anymore now with that any, because any undertaking, no, I don't think any of you want me to build your house.
Yeah, I was sort of thinking about like, there's sort of like the personal realm and the professional realm. And I was thinking like sometimes, or professionally, I didn't have a certain skill. And I was reminded of this when Paul was talking about shaming, where like my manager was a real jerk about it and was like, what do you mean you can't do this? You know, and it's like I was giving it my utmost, and it wasn't like a particularly satisfying outcome, but I'm like, well, you could have, I'm not an Excel expert. I cobbled together something. You want, get one of the finance people to do it if it really needs to be done at a higher level. So yes, Karen, is that your hand from before, or is this okay, we'll hear from Marjorie and then we'll probably hit to breakout rooms.
What I got out of this is ultimately, it's really I'm doing myself a favor by working up to my ability. I just have to do what, I mean, suppose it does not excuse and I mean, like somebody said, judge, we're talking about judgment. Well, I'm not going to judge anybody else at this point. It's like, but I have to work to the best of my ability and just know what I'm capable of and just hit the ground running. And then, I do like parceling things out, whatever they are, whether it's business, whether it's volunteer, dealing with family, but, just do the best you can
Mhm.
at this point. I have to do the best I can.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
That is a good place to segue to what we're going to talk about in the breakout rooms. And this is a quote we've seen before. Would someone like to unmute and read it for us?
I'll read. When a person frees their heart of all other thoughts that reside in it and seizes upon one thought, then they will undoubtedly be zealous in its execution. Or Chot Sadikim, written by an anonymous, most likely female author in the 15th century.
Great, thank you, Joanne. So we have this idea that if we really sort of focus in and we just almost meditate on something, then it makes it easier to do. So how might this level of focus help us practice chesed, doing something, being supportive for other people? And is there something that you feel like you should be doing, but you aren't? Or maybe you're doing something which maybe you think you shouldn't be doing. I'm doing too much of this. I'm getting too focused on executing this. So that's kind of the theme for the breakout. How might practicing enthusiasm help us with
Excuse me.
I am going to set up the breakout rooms. Okay.
I'm not exactly sure I understand that. Are you going to put that in the chat by any chance?
Yeah, I'll put it in the chat.
Okay, because I have to read that again. I didn't quite get it in my brain.
Yeah, maybe this is a little bit more on the esoteric side, but I think the idea is if you don't get like distracted by a million different thoughts, it's easier to kind of do something. It's easier to bring enthusiasm to it. And so how might that apply to like practicing chesed, supporting other people? Is there something which you think, oh, I could be, making eye contact with a homeless person, or I could be giving some money, or I could be, reaching out to someone who I know is having a hard time. Would this kind of focus be helpful to kind of do something and maybe is that helpful, Sarah?
Yeah, it's a little bit more clear. When a person frees their heart of all other thoughts that reside in it.
Okay. So, as always in the breakout rooms, these prompts sometimes are helpful, sometimes they're not, but I trust the group to come up with a good discussion.
The other side, kiddo.
Good discussion.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back. So I would love to hear, does anyone have anything to share from their breakout? Yes, Joanne.
Well, I think, what we were talking about is like how we relate to other people, by honoring them, by paying attention to them, by respecting them,
Mhm.
by having sympathy for them. And, that's a great thing to focus on,
Mhm. Yeah, thank you.
You're welcome.
Yeah, and absolutely love that. Yes, Toby.
We were talking about, I don't know if this is exactly the same take, but we were talking about the one kind thing that you might do for somebody, like if you speak to a homeless person or talk with them, or you smile at somebody who looks like they're not having a really good day. We never know what the impact of that is going to be, and that we by doing that simple, it doesn't have to be a monumental thing. Nobody's going to cure world hunger overnight.
Mhm.
But the one thing that you can do to, whatever prompts you, might be everything to that person.
Yeah.
It might save their life. It might stop a suicide. It might make them want to change, might make them feel like they're a person and that they have worth. And that we never know. Most of the time, people aren't going to come back to us and say, oh, by the way, that smile that you gave me the other day, that made a huge difference to me. We will never see these people again.
Yeah.
But you never know what value those bits of kindness might have to that particular person. And it might seem like nothing to you, but to them, it might be everything.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Love that. Thank you. Thank you, Toby. Marjorie.
I think we hit on looking for the divine spark in everyone. And that's how you really, that would prompt me to treat people with chesed,
Yeah.
including, starting with myself, treat myself with chesed,
Mhm.
and just get one thing done at a time. You've accomplished something. It feels so great.
Yeah.
And then you take that to the next level, or you bring that to the next person. Like, even if it's just being polite to somebody in a public setting, or you hold it, these small, little acts of kindness that we're supposed to be doing. Say please and thank you. I once had somebody thank me for saying thank you. And I'm like, really? People don't, said you'd be surprised how many people will never say please, thank you, or you're welcome. And that's such a small thing, but it really is just to recognizing that humanity.
Yeah. We have like many synagogues around the synagogue I was a part of, we hired security guards at one point, and I always would say hello to them or thank you to them. And they've, at more than one place, the security guards have commented how they like that job because people say hi to them, notice them, and that's really, really important. And if I kind of bring in to kind of what you and Sarah and others have been, I guess it wasn't Sarah, but anyway, I'm starting to melt down. But it's that's kind of where the enthusiasm or alacrity comes in. How do I look for that divine spark? How do I get the energy to do that? That's why it's this famous saying, enthusiasm is kind of the ornament to all the other soul traits. It's that thing that kind of gets you to do that thank you, or that looking for the divine spark. Paul.
Yeah, in our group, we were talking about all of us have ADHD we're dealing with, so focusing on things can be a challenge. But just now coming back out of it, I realized that one thing that what Marjorie was talking about, it reminded me of how when I spent time, helping my mom move into assisted living a year and a half ago. And when I left, I wanted to make sure that I wrote notes to people who had really impacted my mom, let them know how important it was. And so that's one of those things where, I was just wanting to let them know. But the main thing was that it was an idea that came to mind, and I gave myself permission to follow that through. I didn't allow myself to think, oh, I don't want to bother them. They're probably getting lots of all that kind of stuff. It was like, I think what I've been learning is that I have these moments where I have these loving kindness feelings or ideas come out, and giving them room to grow and to develop and for me to follow.
Yeah.
It's not so much I'm getting somebody to kick me in the butt to get me to go. It's more that I'm getting the sense of following this thing, which is really wonderful to follow. So it's, and I'm not getting in my own way.
Yeah.
And then it turns out that this one of the people was receptionist down at the front desk, and she was always just really very happy, very good, a lot of fun to chat with, and always good with my mom. And then she moved up to Seattle with her daughter for another job, and I didn't get a chance to say goodbye, but she wanted to make sure that my mom knew that how important that was. She still had that note that I sent to her.
Wow. Yeah, we just don't know. And so many people, we think of all the times we feel unappreciated in the world, and you say that everybody feels that way most of the time, to make a somewhat simplifying assumption, just showing a little appreciation and, that note can make a huge difference. I can't remember, Nancy, if I saw your hand or if I was just thinking I wanted to give you a chance to say something before we left. I know sometimes you don't choose to share. If today's one of those days, that's fine, but I wanted to give you a chance if you had something you wanted to add. Okay, so Nancy, that was directed at you because you were a little distracted when I was talking. So is there anything you wanted to add this week? And if not, no problem, but I wanted to give you a chance before we signed off.
Oh, thank you. I think, that everyone kind of captured everything. And what we were talking about, just to add a couple more words, is once we find the divine spark within us, it's very easy to find the divine spark in somebody else. Honor ourselves, honor them. And what happens is we create a oneness. We are all one, and a connectedness. And that Hesed is just so powerful.
Wow.
And yeah. I'll wait to say something else when we get back together, because I have a really exciting thing happening to me this Sunday, and I can share that. And then you can all preview it on YouTube. Basically, I'm leading the service.
Oh, wow. Wonderful.
I mean, honored that
Wow.
I have been asked to lead the service and give the talk.
Yeah.
And my life has changed in so many ways, and it's partly because of you all. It's because of all this other stuff that I have been doing over the last year, and this fell in my lap. And again, it's finding the divine spark in each person, and we all have it. And once we put that love out there, you can't go back.
Congrats. That's wonderful.
Wonderful.
That is wonderful, Nancy.
Beautiful.
Thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thank
That's
you.
awesome.
Well, I think that will be our last word for today in terms of the conversation. We're a little bit over, but we'll just take a few seconds to close our eyes and just have a moment of gratitude for this group. This will be our last meeting of this Jewish year. 2 weeks from today is Rosh Hashanah, the start of the new year, and we won't be meeting for the next 2 weeks, but let's just take a moment of gratitude for this past year and the time we've spent together. All right, and when you're ready, you may open your eyes. All right, well, as always, thank you so much. I really, really honor and treasure all of you and the time we get to spend together. So I will look forward to seeing you again in 3 weeks.
Happy New Year, everybody.
New Year's.